Before the River Styx became the most infamous river in Greek mythology, there was another sacred river. A river so mysterious that ancient writers couldn't even agree on where it existed. Some placed it in the distant north. Others connected it to the western edge of the known world. Some associated it with the realm of the dead. And eventually, the Greeks placed it among the stars. Its name was Eridanus. Today, almost everyone knows the Styx. It was the river of divine oaths, the boundary associated with the Underworld. The river later traditions connected with Achilles' legendary invulnerability. But Eridanus, it has almost disappeared from popular mythology. And that's strange, because hidden inside the story of this forgotten river is one of the most catastrophic myths the Greeks ever told. A teenager steals the chariot of the sun. The heavens begin to burn. Entire regions of the earth are scorched. Zeus is forced to intervene, and when the boy finally falls from the sky, he crashes into Eridanus. But that is only the beginning, because his sisters gather beside the river, and something impossible begins happening to their bodies. Their arms become branches, their feet become roots, their tears harden into amber, and somehow this mysterious river eventually leaves the earth entirely and appears in the night sky. So what exactly was Eridanus? A real river, a divine being, a gateway toward the world of the dead, or the surviving memory of a much older myth that even the Greeks themselves no longer completely understood? To answer that, we have to begin with the boy who nearly burned the world. What if the greatest disaster in Greek mythology began because one teenager wanted to prove who his father was? His name was Phaethon, and according to the myth, he was the son of the sun god. Different ancient traditions identify that solar father somewhat differently, but later versions commonly call him Helios, the god who drove the blazing chariot of the sun across the heavens every day. Imagine growing up with that claim. Your father isn't a king, he isn't a hero, he isn't even an ordinary god. He is the being responsible for carrying the sun across the sky. But Phaethon had a problem. Other people doubted him. They questioned whether he truly was the son of Helios, so Phaethon went searching for proof. Eventually, he reached the magnificent palace of the sun. There, surrounded by divine brilliance, he confronted his father. Helios acknowledged him as his son, but Phaethon wanted more than words. He wanted undeniable proof, and Helios made a terrible mistake. He swore that he would grant Phaethon whatever he requested. Phaethon's answer horrified him. He wanted to drive the chariot of the sun. Just once, Helios immediately understood what his son did not. This wasn't simply a vehicle. The horses pulling the sun were immensely powerful. The path across the heavens was dangerous. Even Zeus himself might have struggled with such a task. Helios begged his son to choose something else. Gold, power, anything. But an oath had been made, and Phaethon refused to change his mind. The gates of dawn opened, the divine horses surged forward, and for one brief moment, Phaethon became the driver of the sun. Then everything went wrong. The Greeks imagined an apocalypse thousands of years before modern civilization ever feared one. Phaethon couldn't control the horses. They immediately sensed that the hands holding the reins were weaker than those of Helios. The chariot abandoned its normal path. It climbed too high, then plunged too low, and the balance of the world began collapsing. When the chariot rose toward the heavens, the earth below grew cold. When it plunged toward the earth, the heat became unbearable. Mountains burned, forests ignited, rivers began to dry. The ground cracked beneath the heat of the sun. In Ovid's famous Roman retelling, even great rivers hide from the flames. The entire cosmic order was being threatened because one mortal boy had tried to control divine power, and Phaethon couldn't stop it. He had wanted proof that he was the son of the sun. Now, the entire world was paying for it. The earth itself cried out. Something had to be done, and only one god possessed the weapon powerful enough to stop the runaway sun. Zeus, the king of Olympus, looked toward the burning heavens. He raised his thunderbolt and struck. Phaethon was thrown from the chariot. His body fell through the sky, burning like a star, down toward the earth, down toward a distant river, down toward Eridanus. And the moment Phaethon entered its waters, the river became part of the myth forever. If you enjoy uncovering the forgotten stories of Greek mythology, hit like and subscribe because there are many more myths waiting to be rediscovered. Phaethon's death wasn't the strangest part of the story. What happened afterward was even darker. His body had fallen into Eridanus. But Phaethon wasn't alone. He had sisters. They were known as the Heliades, the daughters of the sun. When they learned what had happened to their brother, they came to the banks of Eridanus and mourned. Day after day, they refused to leave. Their grief became endless until the gods transformed it into something permanent. As the sisters stood beside the river, their bodies began to change. Their feet became fixed to the ground, skin hardened into bark, arms stretched upward into branches, hair became leaves. The daughters of the sun were becoming trees. Even as the transformation consumed them, they continued to cry, and their tears fell into the waters of Eridanus. But these were no longer ordinary tears. They hardened, becoming drops of amber golden stones, the color of sunlight. It is one of the most haunting images in ancient mythology, the daughters of the sun, weeping golden tears beside the river where their brother died. But there may be another reason amber appears in this story, because to the ancient Mediterranean world, amber itself was mysterious. It arrived through distant trade routes from lands far to the north. People knew the beautiful golden substance existed, but many did not know exactly where it came from, so mythology supplied an answer. Amber came from the tears of divine women falling beside the mysterious river Eridanus. And suddenly, the location of this river becomes incredibly important because ancient people began trying to find it. Here's the strange part. The Greeks told stories about Eridanus, but they couldn't agree where it was. That should immediately make us suspicious. Ancient writers attempted to connect Eridanus with real geography. One famous identification linked it with the Po River in northern Italy. That interpretation made sense for an important reason. Amber from northern Europe traveled south through vast trade networks. Northern Italy became connected with routes carrying this precious material toward the Mediterranean. And what does the myth say appears beside Eridanus? Amber. So perhaps the story preserved distant geographical knowledge, but the identification was never simple. Other traditions placed Eridanus elsewhere. Some imagined it in remote northern or western lands. Some descriptions make it feel less like an ordinary river, and more like a boundary at the edge of the known world. Ancient geographers themselves sometimes doubted the stories surrounding it, and that creates a fascinating possibility. Maybe Eridanus was never supposed to correspond perfectly to one river. Perhaps different cultures, travelers, poets, and merchants attached the same legendary name to different waterways. A mythical river gradually became a geographical puzzle. But then something even stranger happened. Eridanus began appearing in stories connected with the edges of the supernatural world, and eventually with the Underworld itself. What if Eridanus wasn't simply a river on Earth, but a river marking the boundary between worlds? Greek mythology was filled with rivers connected to death. The most famous was Styx, but there were others: Acheron, Cocytus, Phaethon, Lethe. The geography of the Greek underworld changed depending on the author and period. There was never one perfectly consistent map, and among these shifting traditions, Eridanus occasionally appears in an eerie position. In some later literary descriptions, it becomes associated with the regions surrounding the world of the dead. This doesn't mean Eridanus was simply another name for Styx. It wasn't. But the connection reveals something important. Eridanus existed on the edges between geography, myth, and cosmic imagination. That makes its role in Phaethon's death even more interesting. Phaethon falls from heaven. He enters Eridanus, and his story moves from the celestial world to the earth, toward death. The river becomes the meeting point between them. Sky, earth, underworld, three cosmic realms, connected by one falling body. And ancient people may have seen that symbolism every night. Because Eridanus wasn't only imagined as a river on earth, it was also a river in the stars. The Greeks lost Eridanus on earth, so they found it in the heavens. Look toward the night sky. There is an enormous constellation stretching across the southern heavens. Its name is Eridanus, the river. It winds across the sky like a celestial stream, and it is one of the constellations inherited from ancient astronomical tradition. This creates an extraordinary transformation. A river associated with Phaethon's fall just became a river among the stars. The connection was irresistible. Phaethon had fallen from the heavens. His body landed in Eridanus, and now Eridanus itself stretched across the heavens. For ancient observers, mythology and astronomy were not completely separate worlds. Heroes became constellations, animals became constellations, monsters became constellations. Stories were written across the night sky, and Eridanus joined them. But this raises another question. Which came first? Did the myth inspire the celestial river, or did people look at the winding constellation, imagine it as a river, and gradually attach older stories to it? We may never know, because myths evolve, stories merge, names move between cultures, and sometimes the oldest layers disappear completely. Eridanus may be one of those cases, a myth whose original meaning was already becoming mysterious in antiquity. And there is one detail that makes that possibility even more fascinating. The story of Eridanus may preserve something far more real than a divine river. It may preserve an ancient trade route. What if the tears of Phaethon's sisters were actually a clue to one of Europe's oldest trade networks? Amber fascinated the ancient world. Hold a piece toward the sun, and you can understand why. It glows, golden, warm, almost as though sunlight itself has been trapped inside stone. For people who didn't understand its geological origins, amber must have seemed supernatural, but much of the amber reaching Mediterranean civilizations came from far beyond Greece. Large deposits existed around the Baltic region. For centuries, trade networks carried amber southward, across rivers, through mountain passes into Italy, and eventually into the Mediterranean world. This is where the myth of Eridanus becomes particularly interesting. Ancient stories associated the distant river with amber. The Heliades cry beside its banks. Their tears become amber. That might sound like pure fantasy, but myths sometimes preserve distorted memories of real places and trade. Imagine Greek merchants hearing stories about a distant northern region, a place where gold and amber could be found, somewhere beyond familiar lands, near a great river. Generation after generation repeats the story. The geography becomes vague. The distant river becomes legendary. And eventually, a myth grows around it. A son of the sun falls there. His sisters mourn there. Their tears explain the mysterious golden substance arriving from the north. Whether that process actually created the Eridanus tradition can't be proven, but the connection between Eridanus and amber became powerful enough that ancient writers repeatedly returned to it. And this transforms Eridanus into something much bigger than a forgotten river god. It becomes a bridge between mythology, geography, astronomy, and ancient commerce. But if Eridanus touched so many parts of the ancient imagination, why did Styx become famous, while Eridanus faded away? Greek mythology remembers one river of death above all others. So why wasn't it Eridanus? The answer may be surprisingly simple. Styx had a clearer identity. The gods swore binding oaths by it. Breaking those oaths carried terrifying consequences. Styx had a defined role in the divine order. Later mythology and popular retelling strengthened its association with the underworld even further. Eridanus was different. It was messy. Was it a river god? Yes, in mythological genealogies, Eridanus could be personified among the great river gods. Was it a physical river? Ancient writers tried to identify one. Was it connected to Phaethon? Absolutely. Was it associated with amber? Repeatedly. Was it celestial? Yes. Was it connected with the regions of death? In some traditions, Eridanus was almost too many things at once, and mythology tends to preserve characters most easily when they have a simple identity. Poseidon rules the sea. Hades rules the dead. Ares represents war. Styx is the terrible river of divine oaths and the underworld. But Eridanus exists between categories, and when stories were simplified, retold, translated, and adapted, those complicated figures were easier to lose. Yet there may be another reason. Eridanus was never truly forgotten. Its mythology simply became separated into pieces. We remember Phaethon, we remember Helios, we remember the Heliades. We know amber. Astronomers still use the name Eridanus, but the river connecting all of them became invisible. And once you put those pieces back together, a much larger story appears. What if one of Greek mythology's forgotten gods never actually disappeared? Eridanus is still above us. Every night, the constellation still carries the ancient name. Astronomers still recognize it. The river that ancient poets struggled to place on earth survived in the sky, and perhaps that is the perfect ending for its story. Because Eridanus was never confined to one world. It flowed through mythology, through geography, through trade, through death, and through the heavens. Its waters received the body of Phaethon, the boy who tried to command the sun. Its banks witnessed the grief of the Heliades, whose legendary tears became amber. Its name became attached to distant lands ancient Greeks struggled to understand, and eventually its winding form was preserved among the stars. There is something almost fitting About that, the Greeks searched the earth for Eridanus. They argued about where it flowed. They tried to match mythology with geography, but perhaps they were looking in the wrong direction, because above them, the river was already flowing across the night sky, and that is what makes Eridanus different from the Styx. The Styx leads downward, toward the kingdom of the dead. Eridanus does something stranger. Its story begins with the sun, falls violently toward earth, touches the shadow of death, and then rises again into the stars. A forgotten river connecting the entire Greek cosmos, heaven, earth, and the world below. So the next time someone tells you that the Styx was the great mysterious river of Greek mythology, remember the river that almost vanished from the stories, the river where a son of the sun fell from heaven, the river where grieving goddesses became trees, the river whose waters carried tears of amber, and the river the ancient world could never quite find. Eridanus, the forgotten river that may have been hiding above us all along.